Good morning, Shabbat Shalom. So when people want to criticize the Torah, what they often say is that the Old Testament, which by the way is already a very loaded term because not old for us, still kind of bright and shiny, but the Old Testament is harsh and legalistic, and that it wants vengeance and that it doesn't want compassion. Now, I actually think that this criticism tells us a lot more about the critic than it does about the Torah. But the passage they usually point to for this is from this week's Torah portion of eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Ayin tachat ayin, shin tachat shin. And they see that all they care about is getting their pound of flesh. But if you look carefully, it's really not about that at all. And especially as we have understood it as a people. One of the things to think about is that there are actually no punishments in the Torah that are about maiming or permanently harming someone. So this idea that if someone had knocked out your tooth, that it's okay to then disfigure them by doing the same thing or taking someone's eye, that isn't found in the Torah itself. And if you look carefully, the law actually does encourage a number of very enlightened and very compassionate ideas that are found within the context of it. The Torah says, ayin tachat ayin, shin tachat shin, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. But it continues that if someone has control over someone else, whether they were someone enslaved to them for whatever reason, and again, slavery is a very loaded issue, and I don't want to get into all the aspects of this, but the Torah ultimately creates a way that it's impossible to do this, and Judaism creates a way that it's impossible. But it also refers to indentured servitude. It can really refer to anyone that you have power over. If you harm them, you have to release them from your power. So even someone who is completely powerless, someone who is in many ways just downtrodden and oppressed, if you take advantage of them and harm them, you have to let them free. You cannot control them anymore. And there are a number of ideas here, which I think are also important to look at, is that ayin tachat ayin, an eye for an eye, is actually a limitation on getting right, so to speak. Because the punishment can never exceed the damage done, no matter how angry you are. That Judaism wants justice, it doesn't want vengeance. There are a lot of people who say, you do something to me, I'm going to do 10 times as much to you. This says no, it has to be proportionate. And according to the Talmud, it's impossible to literally apply this law in all circumstances, therefore it can't be applied literally at all, because what if you have someone who is already missing an eye? The other eye would be a much more disproportionate punishment. Or if someone was missing most of their teeth, that would also be disproportionate. So the Talmud says that this is really about monetary compensation, not about getting exact vengeance. And for me, the most important aspect of this is that an eye for an eye means that the body, the property, and the well-being of someone who is from one of the quote-unquote more menial classes is just as valuable as that of someone of the upper and more powerful classes. Just because you are more powerful than someone, it doesn't give you the right to do whatever you want to other people. And I think for me what is so moving is that the Torah was in fact one of the first books to prioritize protecting the vulnerable from the powerful. Most of history is about celebrating how the powerful took control over everybody, and the Torah takes the exact opposite point of view. I think the Torah is also afraid that once the Hebrew slaves are freed, they would eventually become like the people they fled from. That once they had power themselves, they would cause harm to others. And the Torah is very clear that that is not going to be permitted. No matter how angry we were about our time in Egypt, we can't take it out on other people. In Egypt, at the time, the leadership felt that they were gods and that those who were subservient to them were less than human, and that you could do anything you wanted to them whenever you wanted to them. So when Moses attacked the taskmaster who was beating the Hebrew, Pharaoh was really angry, but he wasn't angry about the attack on the taskmaster, but the fact that Moses treated someone who was enslaved as a full human being. Treating those who are downtrodden and vulnerable as equals is a threat to tyrants. So the difference between a tyrant and a leader is a tyrant puts you in your place and a leader helps you find your place. And that's why tyrants want so much power and real leaders want influence. And there is a profound difference between the two. Pharaoh wanted to demoralize the Hebrews, to remind them to stay in their place, to never dream of being equal to other people. And this is why when they left Egypt as free and equal people, when we left Egypt, this was so devastating to Pharaoh. Because it said that if they are just people, then maybe I am just people. But I believe the Torah is also telling us that we have to value ourselves. It's not just that sometimes we have power over others, but maybe sometimes have power over us, or that we feel that way. The Torah tells us to never let ourselves feel that we deserve the harm that others have done to us. This is what abusers do. They make their victim feel less than, make them feel that they deserve the pain that they're experiencing. And the Torah tells us to fight this idea, whether it is coming from the people in our lives, because we might be living with a tyrant. We might have people in our own homes and families who believe that they can make us feel less than, believe that they can harm us. And the Torah says that that is not the case, that we have to remind ourselves that we are always full human beings, no matter how much harm may have been done to us. And we have to remember this as a people. So many of our enemies, so many of the anti-Semites in the world want to make us disappear. They want us to feel that we are less than human. And that's why we come together to remind ourselves that they will never win. Never. I don't care how hard they try. And if you look at through our history, everyone who has tried to make us disappear has brought that upon themselves. Not in the time frame that we might like, and not without harm and not without pain, but again from Amalek to Haman to today. And when I say today, I mean today. They will disappear from history, which is a shame. But that's where they choose to spend their energy. So the Torah is not a book of law, it's not a book of vengeance, but it's a demand for creating a world of justice and fairness, one that values human life, and it creates a way for people to value themselves, and it is truly our gift to the world. Shabbat Shalom.